Good morning and welcome to Tarot for Two's podcast. Today we'll be talking about the Empress. I'm Tanya Pripetnyevich and I'll be talking with my
And
co-host, Sarah Allen.
Yes. Hi, Tanya. Good morning. Great. So the Empress was my card of the month this month, and we have been looking at it and thinking about it and reading up on it a little bit. I mostly focused on reading from the book by Angeles Arrien, the Tarot Handbook. And it was funny when I was reading about the symbol, I couldn't find them on the card at all. They were things I had never looked at. Particularly, she says something about where is it? She says something about large crystalline bubbles touching each other. And I searched and searched for those, and I could not find them.
Oh yeah.
And then I finally did find them. They're sort of superimposed almost on top of the image. And it's funny how that can be. And then she talks about some other images too that I was like, the kiwi bird, what? And then I looked and I did see that there's this sort of slightly large bird that she's looking at that's either a dove or a kiwi bird. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a kiwi bird. So here we are looking at this symbol. Anyway, what Angeles Arrien says that I really loved is that this card has to do with love with wisdom and not having the need to overgive or push to make things happen emotionally, and not protecting or holding ourselves back emotionally. The Empress represents the trusting, balanced heart rather than the controlling, protective heart. So, as often happens with these cards, sometimes it's hard for me to read that and then specifically apply it to myself, but I love that reading and that interpretation of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking at the Rider-Waite deck. There's the heart at the base of the throne of the Empress with this symbol of Venus in the middle of it. And I was reading in the Jodorowsky, The Way of Tarot, the spiritual teacher in the cards, that about the Empress as offering us an entry. If we can get into the intelligent light of the Empress's heart, we'll be able to exercise our creative power. But I love the warmth that comes through in that Angeles Arrien, love with wisdom.
Yeah, me too. She also said something that I liked. It's related to during the Empress years, and then she refers you to another section in the book, and I could never find how you figure out what the Empress years are. But she said this is one of the best years to do the following: break patterns of overgiving or overprotecting oneself emotionally, resolve motherhood issues, excel in profession and in leadership positions where one can model the power of the mind and heart working in tandem, and bring more beauty, harmony, nature, and receptivity into one's own life. All sounds very, very good. She also said that if you are born with a number 3 as your lifetime symbol, which I am not, mine is number 5, which I think has to do with learning many lessons in a lifetime. But if you're born with a number 3, which I'll just sort of say, okay, well, I got this as my card of the month, so maybe I have my card of the month as number 3. One is like the Empress in one's capacity to love, nurture, comfort, support, and heal others. So all of that sounds lovely to me. And I can sort of, when you have a card like this and you're trying to apply it to yourself, it brings you up against your humility and your modesty, and not wanting to say, well, I certainly know how to love with wisdom. I certainly know how to support and heal others. But it did kind of make me think a bit about some of the things that I do in my life. I mentor many people, both as a sponsor and a 12-step program and then also as a writing coach. And sometimes people that I am trying to mentor come to me with a lot of pain and very hard histories, and I try to help them heal using writing. So I guess I could maybe apply it to myself in that way. Tanya, what else?
Yeah, I think I love that line in Angeles Arrien. I think you just read it, but they're great. That line about the greatest challenge is to nurture, comfort, and support themselves in equal proportion to how they support and nurture others. And I would have to say the Empress card actually is my number of the month, or number, sorry, the dog is going after the mice. There's a mouse behind
now
the
you know
dishwasher.
there's a mouse behind her dishwasher.
and
now
this,
you get to see into our real lives.
that's right. Anyway, I guess I think that's a beautiful aspect of mothering that maybe isn't always talked about, is that the mother, in a role as mothering, that there's that need to also balance it out by giving to the self in that way too. But I love the examples you gave of being in that role for others in your life.
Well, and it's interesting to think of this card in terms of mothering. And I have many, I guess I can say had in the past tense because I've worked for years on resolving them, but many issues with my own mother, who has been dead since 1981. But that's been the biggest challenge in my life, and also the biggest psychologically healing opportunity is with my mother when I was a little girl, because she was mentally ill and I was afraid of her, and that set the tone for my whole life. And so she certainly wasn't the Empress figure in my life, but I like, to me, this card is also sort of talking about learning how to become a mother yourself, or heal whatever the mother energy is inside yourself. And I did not get to be a mother, unlike you, Tanya, and I wish I had, but I didn't. But nevertheless, my whole life, it's sort of this mothering energy is kind of spread all over it, because I'm trying to learn how to be a mother to myself, and all of this mentoring and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading too about the metaphor of motherhood being sort of, if you take it very literally, there's this idea of two energies coming together to make a third thing, which in the metaphor of, in the actuality is the child. But if we think about it in larger terms, it's recombining different elements to create a third thing. And in that aspect, I think it works metaphorically beautifully for the writing coaching or the mentoring that you're talking about, where you're showing up and working with someone, but you're also together working with the third energy of whatever storyline or crisis is at hand.
Yeah.
And then it creates a third thing that is maybe you're
Yeah.
being a doorway for people to walk through. I think the doorway is another beautiful metaphor for mother image.
Yeah, it really is. And also what you just said really makes sense to me, because when you're writing, the writing itself is almost the third party,
Yeah.
And and that's such a huge part of my life, is taking what life is made of and observing it, and just sort of seeing what's there, and then making something through writing with it. And then with working with a client or a writing coaching client, then there are the two of us creating the writing. So that's lovely. When I look at this card, trying to think about how does this actually relate to my specific month is such a challenge. I think that's one of the more interesting challenges of the cards is, okay, great, there's all this stuff. How do we really connect it to our lives, beyond just going, oh yeah, I'm mothering. Oh yes, I
Yeah.
have love with wisdom.
Yeah.
I always think of how, I don't know if it was me or someone else. It was, and when you get like for example, an astrological reading, and they say all the good things, and you say, oh yes, oh yes, 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 and then when they say the bad things, oh no.
You're
So
right.
but I don't know. It's looking at this, and if I was going to write about this as my card of the month, I would probably have to talk about something really practical and sort of silly, which is I had my bathtub refinished just this month, and I have needed to do that for a really long time, but I've been postponing it because of the money and because of all the chemicals involved and all the work it takes. So anyway, I finally had my bathtub refinished, and now I've got this beautiful tub that I can not only just take showers in, which is what I was doing before, but take, baths where I can nurture myself and feel feminine and good about myself, and also that my house feels a little better, and I feel that I'm working on coming into those parts of myself a little bit more, at this point in my life, fairly late compared to how many people do it. But I've always thought of my house as sort of a metaphor for how I feel about myself, and to be able to have this beautiful new bathtub
Oh,
is sort of
yeah.
saying something that I guess you could link to the Empress in some way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was reading this beautiful couple of paragraphs in the Tarot by Richard Cavendish where he's looking at the Venus symbolism connected to the Empress and the rose. In the Rider Waite deck, we see the Venus and the heart there on her throne, and they connect sort of the garden imagery to the Garden of Eden. Of course, in the Christian legend here, he talks about how there was a rose, but in Eden, which had no thorns, and all of these sort of Christian ideas. But then he talks about the Song of Solomon and the garden Mary as a metaphor for that. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed, sort of the earthly paradise. But Venus also owned a garden, the goddess of the gardens, and it wasn't really a haven of, like he says in here, not a haven of virginal seclusion, but a bower of sensual delight and the earthly paradise of love. And that so the early 15th century, the two gardens were sort of confused, like the idyllic Garden of Eden, and then the
Mm.
one where it was really meant to be this earthly paradise of love and sensuality. So I'm just thinking about your bathtub as this beautiful symbol for regeneration, and also what you said about the home itself. I mean, when you look at this Empress card in the Rider Waite, she's seated on this velvet throne with this orange pillow behind her. There's a sort of wheat growing at her feet and a beautiful blue river that's spilling out behind her. She has pomegranates on her gown and the stars of 12 I think it's 12 stars of heaven, 7 pearl necklace around her throat. It's very, very lovely, just like pleasure for pleasure's sake. And so I love your bathtub metaphor. And your home is beautiful,
Well,
you know?
yeah, and I guess what this is saying to me right now about myself too is that it's about creating that inside my mind,
Mm-hmm.
getting to that place inside myself more, and
Mm-hmm.
doing it by the approach through the physical world, that make your house nicer, refinish your bathtub or whatever it is that would make your house feel like a more beautiful finished place, then can reflect on how you feel inside yourself. And I think it can go back the other way too, like how I feel inside myself affects how I make my home. And if I don't feel too good about myself, then I just let my bathtub be crappy and I don't even notice it, which is basically what I did for a long time. So,
Sure.
anyway, this is great. It gives me a whole new way of looking at the Empress. And thank you, Tanya, for talking about her with me.
Yeah. You're welcome. I wanted to give one more example, Mary. I was thinking about visualization and happiness, and I think you've been one of the people that have said to me before when things were challenging, why don't you, in meditation, imagine yourself in a beautiful place and what that would look like, and how you would feel sitting there in it. And I remember thinking about in one of those meditations, imagining the sea and the ocean, which it's not surprising. That's something I love anyway. But yesterday I was watching my son and another child play at the ocean, and there was sort of a slight breeze coming along. And I was laying in the sand and I kind of closed my eyes for a few moments. And I remembered that meditation. And then I realized, oh, here I am meeting that moment in my waking present
Yeah.
life. And I feel beautifully happy in this beautiful environment, but my heart is at peace. And it just felt like a lovely moment. Like the children are happy. I can trust the sea to take care of them. They've just gotten done with junior lifeguards. They know how to care for themselves in the ocean. I'm still watching them, but I can sit here in the sand and feel happy within myself. And it felt like an experience of the Empress card in that moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that ultimately what really matters is how you feel inside yourself.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to change how I feel inside myself in any way other than just through working with the hard stuff. I can't just make myself feel peaceful and good, but I, to me, that you can have a moment like that says that you have worked through so much of the hard stuff. And I also think that's kind of what this card says to me personally, that I have a chance now of living in a beautiful place, both physically and inside myself. I think they both go together, because I can keep getting, more closer and closer to this place of the Empress.
Yeah. And
Um,
I'm thinking about how much over the years I've been inspired by listening to you talk about the work you've done in relation to your mother, and that you've been willing to turn and give to others despite having gone through very challenging things. And I think that's a very uh, generous sort of healing possibility through the Empress card. Um,
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and that metaphor for the door, I just was looking at the Book of Tokens by Paul Foster Case, and he has a beautiful image of the Empress, and she's bordered in green in his card and has a green gown on, and the opening meditation line is, I am the door of life. So I
Mm.
think that's a
Oh,
lovely.
that's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely on every level. Um, well, okay. So thank you, Tanya. It's been great.
Tarot blessings on your week.
Yes, you and yours too.